The Baltimore Ravens wrapped up joint practice on Thursday with the Packers, and mixed results were the words that were used for the Ravens' performance. We talk about what happened, whose stocks went up, whose stocks went down, and so much more coming up next on this episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today on this Purple Friday and wrapping out the week here with an episode of Locked On Ravens. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day and just a part of your day in general here on the show. We're free and available for you on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube and audio form wherever you get your shows. We're 5 days per week here on Locked On Ravens, Monday through Friday. Plus, we have bonus episodes, bonus content, including we went live yesterday after joint practices and went into a little instant reaction mode. We talked about everything that happened during the day, but we're going to dive more into it today. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Well, joint practices, practice, I guess, right, came and went for the Ravens on Thursday. Lamar Jackson, Jordan Love, Ravens, Packers. It's in the books. We now wait for the Ravens and the Packers to face off in the preseason tomorrow, which again, we will be live after the game tomorrow. We'll be diving into what happened and doing a little bit of a final stock report for the Ravens, but we're going to be talking stocks today as well. As we're going to do a stock up and stock down from the Ravens joint practice with those Packers. And so in the first part of the show, we'll just kind of dive into what happened over the course of the practice, kind of what happened, who was dominating, who wasn't. We'll do that in the second part of the show as well, kind of just dive into players who improved their stock, players that did not, concern points that are concerned still, maybe guys that alleviated some concern. We'll talk about that. And then we'll just talk about what to make of the whole thing, because I think there was a lot of controversy about it and you know, just what to make of the Ravens going through that day yesterday and not, you know, being the Ravens won the practice, because the majority of the consensus was, the Packers, if you had to pick a team who won the practice, it was the Packers. So we'll talk about all of that. We talked about it again in a lot of depth during yesterday's live show, which is available to watch back on YouTube, or if you're an audio listener, you can also listen back to it. We put it out there as well. So a little stock report, right? Some stocks for today and, of course, for Sunday when we are done with the preseason officially. But for the Ravens, disappointing probably isn't the word that I want to use here, but it's something along those lines for the practice where, look, there were good moments. And I'm not saying that the Ravens, they lost this practice and they were the team that, you know, there was nothing good that happened to them, right? That would not be telling what actually happened there. But you know, as practice happened and went on and everything was going, you know, really felt like Green Bay had the better of the Ravens. But it did feel like there were some guys that stepped up for Baltimore. Lamar Jackson had an up and down day, apparently. And by the way, a bunch of Packers reporters there, as you expect from a Green Bay practice, right? You'd be kind of concerned if that wasn't the case. I believe only 3 Baltimore reporters made the trip. Again, that's from what I could gather. That is what happened. It was Clifton Brown of BaltimoreRavens.com. You had Brian Wacker of the Baltimore Sun and Jana Hahn of the Baltimore Banner. Those were the 3 Packers reporters. Were doing play-by-plays and, pretty frequent updates. Obviously, when you don't have as many reporters, just in terms of manpower, it can be tough to do that. So there weren't really a lot of Ravens updates until the middle/end of practice. And all the reports from the Packers reporters were like, you know, praising the Ravens too when they deserved it. But obviously from what they were all saying, it was, Packers this, Packers that. And, you know, put the Baltimore fan base in a little bit of a frenzy, I think. So that is something that I think got everybody a little riled up early on, but just pulling up stuff from Clifton and his notes. he had a lot of really interesting observations because, for one, I think it puts things in perspective where, yes, the Ravens struggled in this practice. And Clifton notes some areas where the Ravens struggled. The biggest one being on the offensive line where, hey, you know what? Roger Rosengarten, he had a really nice rep against Rashawn Gary one-on-one. It's really tough to do that. Rosengarten is expected to be a huge part of their offensive line. That's a very solid rep. But for the most part, according to people who were there, obviously the tweets from the reporters beforehand, Clifton makes a note of it here as well. But there was a lot of pressure on Lamar Jackson in the Ravens backfield. So, guys like Voorhees, Falele, Rosengarten, I think it's a good experience to go up against the stout Packers defensive line, one that John Harbaugh actually went out of his way to praise after practice, post-practice. He was praising the Packers defensive front and saying how explosive they were, how good they were. But there were tough moments. Clifton notes the defensive line was pouring into the backfield to force blow and whistle sacks to begin Baltimore's 2-minute drill. By the way, that tweet, if you listen to the live, there was a tweet that I had. It was a play-by-play, essentially, of Baltimore's 2-minute drill with the offensive ones for the Ravens. So Lamar Jackson, I still cannot find the tweet. I think it might have been deleted, and I don't know why it was deleted. I can kind of recite a little bit of it back here where to open it up, as Clifton notes, I think it was Devontae Wyatt had a sack on Lamar to open it up. Then there was a play. I think there might have been an incompletion. And then Lamar on another play hit Rashad Bateman for a big play. I think he hit Zay Flowers for a big play. He scrambled a little bit to pick up some yardage. It ended up resulting in a Justin Tucker missed 60-plus yard field goal. But they had a couple moments where they were either at fourth down or they were facing a tough stretch, and they were able to get the job done. So, again, apologies I couldn't find the tweet. I literally have no idea. I searched all the keywords. I'm like, okay, I remember this being in the tweet and that being in the tweet, but I couldn't find it. But that is what I remember, at least for what I can recite back. But, yeah, the offensive line is the big concern here because by all accounts, this Packers defensive front did a really good job against them, and that's been the point we've been talking about all offseason as well. You lose 60% of your starters. What is that going to look like? And while this is not a game, still it's ones on ones, right? It's best on best, essentially. Now, speaking of that, Tyler Linderbaum was not practicing. So if you want to say best on best, obviously best available. Linderbaum is not available right now. So when he's back, obviously I think that does make a difference. But man, it felt like, there was the one tweet where the Packers beat reporter said that Lamar is running for his life and not by design out here. And that was really the one that got everybody in a frenzy. But man, I can't tell you it's not concerning to hear about the struggles. Again, I think it's great there are reps like Rosengarten's, right? But that right guard spot is the one everybody's looking at. So an early stock down would definitely be the offensive line for the Ravens based off of everything that was going on. But I will note, John Harbaugh did say he was pleased with what he saw from the offensive line. He said that they looked good. He thought they looked good. They were bringing the bull rushes. The Packers were physical games. He said his guys are stout. You're not going to be perfect. Lamar definitely holds the ball. Lamar's not looking to run. He's looking to stay in there and throw. He said he couldn't wait to see the tape, but he was happy with how firm the pocket was 90% of the time. So, again, a pretty stark contrast from what the overall reports were. But you know what? Maybe the Ravens were looking for one thing, and they saw it. But I don't think we can take away that every single report essentially said that the Packers defensive front was pretty dominant. And so Clifton actually notes a couple of things that I noted about the 2-minute drill where the first team offense overcame the sack, and it was a fourth down conversion to Justice Hill, but they had to settle for a 62-yard field goal because in the 2-minute drill, they ran a little low on time, and Justin Tucker missed that one. Stock up. Talk about a guy, Ardarius Washington. Ardarius Washington made a touchdown-saving pass breakup after the Packers moved down the field during the 2-minute drill near the end of practice. He had a pass breakup earlier in practice. Ardarius Washington, man, he is just – his stock is all the way up right now. I think, if he wasn't on your 53-man roster, he certainly is right now. He was one of the bright spots in practice here. Nate Wiggins, on the other hand, did not have a very strong practice. Well, I shouldn't say that. He was up and down. right? Wasn't the strongest practice we've seen from him. He was beat for 40-yard completion, 40-plus yard completion here by Malik Heath, and did have, I think, 1 or 2 reps where he looked really good during some of these, team drills, but getting beat on the 40-yarder, obviously not wonderful there. For Lamar, how did Lamar do? That's the big question. Lamar had a touchdown to Rashad Bateman and Charlie Kohler during red zone drills. Apparently looked sharp according to Clifton. Other people notes, had his moments for sure. Like we're talking about here, also had some ones where could have been a little bit better. John Harbaugh saying he thought Lamar looked great. I think it's all valuable experience for these guys, especially as they're not going up against, anybody in the preseason. They're not playing in the preseason. So this essentially is the starters preseason and maybe what could be looked forward to as maybe what the future is in terms of some of the ways that the preseason evolves over the next few seasons. Lamar found Zay Flowers for a completion of 25 yards to keep the drive moving. Flowers apparently was really animated, Clifton says here, throughout practice, and liked competing against the Packers defensive backs, who Clifton notes found him difficult to cover. That's somebody who I did expect, like out of, and we talked about this yesterday with Kadri Ismail. Q and I, before the practice, we spoke about who we thought was going to have a good day, who we thought needed to have a good day. And I said, look, I think Zay's going to have a great day. Super hard to cover one-on-one, right? It's really hard to slow him down. I think we saw that. So coming up in the second part of the show, we'll be talking more about specific stock up, stock down, kind of going into what happened over the course of joint practices, diving into whose stock rose, whose stock fell. Stay tuned, plenty to get to here on the show. First, the show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And for me, for a lot of other people, there are self-care non-negotiables. Maybe you never skip leg day or therapy day, and your schedule is packed with case activities, big work projects, and more. It's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it sometimes. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. And therapy can have so many benefits, from learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries, empowering you to become the best version of yourself. It has so many. Plus, it isn't just for those who's experienced major trauma. It's for everyone. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched to a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. We're back for our second segment. Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Purple Friday. Appreciate everybody for being here today, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every day. It means a lot to me. We're growing this show, growing this channel. Really appreciate everybody who has stuck with me along the way and is just starting off sticking with me. Again, it means the world. And so if you're an everydayer, really appreciate you with your constant support. If you're new to the channel, hopefully you're enjoying. Welcome in. Hopefully you're liking what you're hearing, watching so far. And if you're somewhere in the middle, welcome back to the show. Now let's round out Clifton's notes a little bit here. Then we'll move on to some other notes from joint practices. Apparently, according to Clifton, Love did his best work against Baltimore's defense in the red zone. And this was noted during the tweets throughout the practice. But Jordan Love had 4 passes from within the 10-yard line. He had 4 touchdowns, 4 for 4 with that. So not what you want to be hearing, but that's where Jordan Love apparently did his best work, was in the red zone, which, again, like Baltimore, one of the identities of their defense last season was the bend, don't break mentality, right? That was, we would always go back to that phrase, always go back to bend, don't break, where, you could take that short intermediate stuff, right? That's fair. That's one of the areas where Baltimore was, willing to give up some stuff. But then once you got down inside that 20, you weren't moving the ball in the end zone. That was the big part with this defense, where you got held to 3 points if you were an opposing offense. It was very rare that you scored a touchdown on Baltimore in the red zone. So obviously, this is joint practice. This is not the regular season. I'm not putting all my stock, all the eggs in the basket of joint practice means everything, and that's that. No, obviously not. But, we can sit here and acknowledge that, that's not great for the Ravens defense. Brandon Stevens, Kadri Ismail and I talked about it. Everybody's talked about him. He's had an incredible camp, incredible summer. He's been great. And Clifton notes it here. He hasn't yielded many completions, Clifton says. But Romeo Doubs, who's one of the Packers' very young receivers and someone who has a really bright future in this league, he caught about a 35-yard ball on Brandon Stevens. And Jordan Love, apparently, as Clifton notes, was not shy about challenging that Ravens secondary all day, as we noted with Nate Wiggins and a couple of other guys as well. Another note here is Kyle Hamilton did get a little shaken up on a play. Gianna Hahn from the Baltimore Banner ended up reporting that first, where there was a jump ball between Hamilton and Christian Watson. I believe that ball was in the end zone, if I'm not mistaken, and Watson came down with it. But Hamilton was kind of walking around by himself and was like slow a little bit to gather himself and ended up kind of just going down to his hands and knees. I'm trying to find the tweet quickly here just for what Gianna actually said, because I want to, I don't want to put words in her mouth. I want to read out what she said. Here we go. Safety Kyle Hamilton was walking around by himself with trainers. He was holding his left hip. Then he went down to his hands and knees, eventually got up and walked off. It was after a one-on-one with Christian Watson. And then she clarified Hamilton returned to the field, but has not been playing. A trainer stood with him a while, and they kept looking at his hip. John Harbaugh, after practice, said it wasn't a serious thing. But again, it's the second time this type of thing has happened, second injury scare, I guess, with Kyle Hamilton. And it's tough. Like, obviously, Harbaugh saying it's not a serious injury. Very glad. I don't know what the plan is going to be with him. Just kind of putting him in bubble wrap and not him practicing. I don't know what it's going to be. But those hip injuries can be tough sometimes. So glad it's not a serious injury, at least according to Harbaugh there. But that's the other thing here is I think a big stock up here, like a big, really important point for both teams, is that outside of that, there were really no injuries from what was noted here. No fights at all, which was great. And Harbaugh talked about that, where he said, it was two teams trying to get better. Both teams had a lot of respect for the other one. And it was a spirited competitive practice. And I think that's where Harbaugh and the Ravens, like if I were to give an analysis on, why it seems like Baltimore was really happy with the performance, I think one, their guys did perform. It's not like nobody performed for them. So their guys did perform. But two, Packers are going to be a good team this season. I think they are. They have talent on both sides of the ball. They have a lot working for them. And to have a good, solid day of practice where, sure, you struggled a lot, like some units, like the offensive line, they struggled, but it was a good day of work where you can see what's right and what's wrong. I think that is where the Ravens are coming from. If I have to give my analysis, my guess is to why that, is kind of what the mood is right now. But John also had her thoughts on the Baltimore Banner. And obviously, again, shout out to the three who were out there for the Ravens. I know it was a smaller reporter pool compared to the Packers, and we were getting those Packers updates. And shout out to the Packers reporters for keeping everybody updated throughout the practice. But John ended up saying that, look, it's stuff where there were struggles and then there were good things that happened. The Ravens defense, right? Roquan Smith was one of the stars of practice, had pass breakups, interception, was all over the place. Justin Madubuike got a pressure on Jordan Love. Adafe Owe pressured Jordan Love. You have Michael Pierce, Trayvon Mullen getting pass breakups. But then you had the Nate Wiggins play with Malik Heath, Gianna said. And so that's kind of the sequence in what happened there. We talked about the Brandon Stevens play. So, yeah, it's a culmination of everything that is kind of going on. Patrick McCary had the honor of getting the first reps at right tackle. Rosengarten actually was with the seconds, I believe, if I'm reading this right from Gianna here. She's saying at practice, Rosengarten was not the first right tackle out. It was Patrick McCary who got that honor. And Nick Samek, who we now know has been playing center for the Ravens, was snapping the ball to Lamar Jackson. So, again, it's been big for these young guys to get reps. But in preseason, they're not going up against Devontae Wyatt, Rashawn Gary, those types of players. I thought it was a good experience for them. They did struggle, obviously, has been noted here by multiple people. But that is what happened here. Moore had a great pass to Malik Cunningham for a touchdown. Again, Rashad Bateman made a couple of really nice plays. Isaiah Likely had a couple of nice catches here. Again, we mentioned Charlie Kohler, Zay Flowers catching touchdowns in red zone drills. But the Ravens offense did struggle against the Packers defense for a decent amount here. And look, it's a credit to the Packers, right? They're a good team. They're a really good team. So are the Ravens. But I think that there were positives and negatives to take away from this. I'm not sitting here hitting the panic button and saying, oh, this is, it's all bad. It's all bad. There's nothing good that happened. Obviously, that's not the case. I'm also not sitting here and saying, oh, well, it's just, we're going to ignore the negatives and we're only going to, no, we're not going to do that either, obviously, right? The offensive line has been a concern of mine for a while now. Obviously, this did not help my, my meter for that in terms of how comfortable and confident I am. But again, it's like we're not going to know until the regular season starts. Honestly, we're not going to know until the season ends, if I'm being completely honest. Like, there are going to be moments where during the regular season, there's still growing process, they're still learning. But this is another part of that. So, yeah, I mean, again, it's nice to have the reps, but you got to put it all together when the time comes. And hopefully the Ravens can do that when it does. And that's coming up now, less than 2 weeks. The Ravens and the Chiefs face off in week 1. Coming up in the final part of the show, we'll talk about what to make of the mixed results in general for the Ravens from joint practice, continue to dive a little bit more into the specifics of what happened and expand on our live show yesterday. So be sure to stay tuned, plan to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And for me, I've had a ton of great experiences over on LinkedIn, whether it's finding jobs, networking, connecting. LinkedIn has it all over there. And LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn knows how professionals who can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit earth-leading job sites. Sorry if you're not looking on LinkedIn or looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like professional on LinkedIn. Plus, 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Push your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to push your job for free. Some conditions apply. We return our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you. Didn't go anywhere. We're rounding out this Purple Friday edition of the show. Again, appreciate everybody for being here today and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. Wanted to go live yesterday after the joint practice because I feel like everybody was talking about it. Everybody wanted the update. So we did an instant reaction based off of what we had heard, the tweets that came out. And then obviously now with some of the articles that have come out, it's been good to expand on that here on today's episode. But if you haven't checked out the live show, Instant Reaction from Joint Practice is up, both video form and audio form, where you can catch the show regardless of how you like to watch or listen. It's the same show, both audio and video form. We're 5 days a week here at Ravens content, plus bonus episodes. So again, we'll go live tomorrow after the Ravens and the Packers face off in their preseason game. We'll dive into what happened, and then we'll do a bonus episode on Sunday morning. That'll be out at 6 a.m. talking about a final stock report for the Ravens just in preseason in general. But let's talk about to make from the mixed results for the Ravens at joint practice. Plus, we'll dive into some players that I'm hoping can have a big preseason game for Baltimore tomorrow and kind of guys that need it in order to make a roster push. Now, the joint practice is a thing that is becoming more and more popular. I don't necessarily know what it's going to look like over the next 3-5 seasons where, we've had multiple days of joint practices for a lot of these teams where you'll go out for 2 days and you'll have that and then you'll play. But this was only a 1-day thing for the Ravens. I don't know if that's kind of where this is headed now, where these practices to, maybe not risk injury. Part of the reason why the health part of this was so important for the Ravens was we saw teams like the Bengals and Bears go through joint practices. And I think the Bengals lost 2 guys for the season with injury. And I mean, that happens, right? In practice, guys go down. It's tough to avoid, right? Every team goes through it. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where the Packers and the Ravens are going hard at each other. They both wanted to get better. I think they both did get better. I think, if you had to declare a winner of this, I think you go with the Packers. But the Ravens also last year there was a lot of conversation about, Zay was dominating joint practice, but the Commanders had a bunch of good things that happened. And then we obviously know which team was better come regular season. So I am not putting all my stock into joint practices, right? We talked about whose stock was up, whose stock was down, but I'm not necessarily doing the whole, now we have to, what happened at joint practices is the gospel, right? We're not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm not really sure a lot of people are saying that, but I just want to make the point of where I am on that. And some other specifics that happened that we can kind of, again, just base our conversation off of is, people really impressed with Roquan Smith, right? People were really impressed with Roquan Smith. In the 2-minute drills, the Ravens defense held the Packers to a field goal for the ones. Ravens defense for the twos held the Packers defense, and the Ravens threes on defense held the Packers to a field goal. All 3 times, the Packers were held to a field goal. Ravens offense, as we mentioned in the 2-minute, Justin Tucker missed a 62-yarder with the Ravens offensive ones. Evan Williams had an interception on Josh Johnson with the twos. And then there was a turnover on downs with the Ravens threes. So, again, there are positives and negatives, even just in that. Oh, wait, did I find it? Oh, I found the tweet. I just found the tweet. After all of that, as we're just coming up in this third segment, I found the tweet I was looking for the whole time. Wow, I feel great. This is glorious. Let me read the tweet. So this is what I'm talking about. It was the same drill. So 2-minute drill for the Ravens offense. The ones. This is what happened. Play-by-play of what happened. I'm so glad I found this. Kenny Clark starts it off with a sack. Timeout Ravens. Then Lamar fires in a completion to Isaiah Likely. Javon Bullard closed quick, but Likely made the catch. The clock keeps ticking. Lamar completed to the sidelines out of bounds. Then on 4th down, Lamar finds a check down for a first down. Again, Lamar using check downs. Love that. Then Lamar to Justice Hill again on a check down. Clock ticks. Lamar to Bateman on a crosser. Lots of time coming off. First down. So that's a big play. Then there was a spike down to 10 seconds left. So, of course, they try to see what they can do. It was a great coverage and pressure by the defensive line. Lamar to throw it away. 3 seconds. Justin Tucker misses the field goal. So Andy Herman with that tweet. Wow, I can't believe I found. I did one last ditch effort to try to find it, and it paid off. So look, man, what a journey to find that tweet. But I'm glad we could get more context now into the Ravens offensive ones 2-minute drill. We talked about the 4 touchdowns from inside the 10 for Jordan Love. He felt some pressure during the day, but it felt like there really wasn't a ton. He ended up actually being able to escape and make stuff happen with his legs when he did get pressure on some of these plays as well. Jaden Reed had a play on Nate Wiggins as well. A couple of nice plays again by Roquan and Trenton Simpson. He kind of started things off. But early on, the Ravens defense was making a lot of plays. So, yeah, it's just it's a matter of being able to take the good with the bad. There was always going to be bad in this practice, right? I wasn't going into this practice expecting every single position group, every single player to just dominate the Packers. It's not realistic. But, if you're worried about the offensive line, I'm not here to blame you. I'm also worried about the offensive line. I think it'll be fine. I think, we'll be talking probably month and a half, 2 months into the season after some growing pains and be like, oh, look, they have continuity. They're gelled. It looks good. But that obviously will depend on a couple of other factors as well. So, man, joint practice does have that kind of game feel to it, especially when the starters are going out there. And you don't really see the starters in preseason that much anymore. Some teams do it, but obviously we know the Ravens do not. Speaking of the preseason, though, Ravens and Packers will face off tomorrow. And some guys that I would really hope to see with big performances. Tez Walker, who, by the way, did have a DPI drawn in this practice. The guy was face guarding him. But I would hope Tez Walker could maybe get some rhythm going. Some of these younger wide receivers, again, can they step up? Malik Cunningham, who had a touchdown. I know he's not a younger guy, but Anthony Miller, who has made a real big name for himself, he had a nice play in practice as well. Can he continue his momentum? Tylan Wallace versus Dayton Wade, I think, is the big wide receiver competition here. And then some of these young tight ends, too. Charlie Kohler, is he going to play and make an impact? Kadir Ismail, what can he end up doing? So there are plenty of conversations there. But the biggest one to me is the guard competition, right? What is this guard competition going to look like for the Ravens? Is Ben Cleveland going to get the start this time around? What's Fale? How many reps is Falele going to play? Samek, is he going to play most of the game at center? What is the offensive line going to look like? I think everybody's going to be locked in on that line for sure. Defensively in the secondary, Pepe Williams, others as well, Adarius Washington. I think Trent Simpson's probably done this preseason, but, you can kind of look to other places and see where, is Josh Ross going to play? Is, what's going to have? Is Chris Board, he returned? Is he going to play defensive line-wise? Joe Evans. So, again, plenty of players to watch, and then we'll be diving into what the roster could look like over the course of the next week because roster cutdown is in just a couple of days now. So, of course, we'll have final roster predictions and a lot more. So be sure to stay tuned for all of that here on Locked On Ravens. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you again for tuning in, listening, watching, however you decide to consume our content. Really, really appreciate it. Coming up tomorrow, we will be back after the game. We're talking live, instant reaction, so be sure to subscribe, follow along on YouTube if you want to be in the live chat. Turn notifications on YouTube as well. But if you just want to watch it back, listen to it back, it will be available after the fact in audio form and video form. So again, really appreciate the support. Stay tuned. See you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.